Now it's time to introduce you to staple posts. We call them staple posts because they're like the bread and butter or the rice and beans of your website. With time, you're going to find that the majority of your content is probably going to fall into the staple post category. So how are staple posts different from response posts? Really, a staple post does one of two things. One, it responds to multiple search queries, like maybe a whole query group. The other thing that it may do is mostly respond to one query, but do so in a level of detail that it just can't be covered in about 1,000 words or so. And you just need more meat, more depth, and more research. So we need to spend more time on it as well. For those types of posts, it's not going to be uncommon for you to actually rank for multiple different search queries, not just the primary one, simply because of the depth and even the breadth of content that you decide to cover. For all types of staple posts, no matter what format of staple post we choose, we plan to spend at least 3 hours on these blog posts. It's not necessarily because it always takes that long to type up that long of a blog post. It's simply because we just need to take the time to do more research. We need to take the time to put together a better resource for the readers on our website for this type of content. 3 hours is kind of a minimum. Sometimes these will take more like 4, 5, maybe even 6 hours. This could be a type of article you spend a few days working on if you're spending a couple hours a day. We also expect these blog posts to be at least 2,000 words long. There may come a time in which you're going to do that sort of depth of research and that put together an awesome resource, but it's only going to be 1,500 words because of all the different things that you're including in this blog post other than just normal text. That's going to be okay, but for now, it's really important that you shoot for that 2,000 word number because that's going to force you to put more information in here, put more meat in here, and make your blog post better. Now, there are actually multiple different formats that we use when we create staple content, and today I'm just going to introduce you to the first one and invite you to create one of your own. This one is probably going to be the most straightforward because it's most analogous to a response post, so much so that I like to call it the long response post staple post. Now, basically what we're doing here is we're taking one main search query, but a search query where the answer is quite a bit more in depth, where we're going to be able to provide a much more valuable resource, and we're going to cover that in a lot more than 1,000 words. In fact, we're going to shoot for at least 2,000. Let me walk you through an example of what one of those looks like that I wrote a little while back. This is an article that is on manscouts.com. I wrote it for a YouTube video, actually, to do a comparison between the type of content that a total amateur writes without any training versus what a professional blogger would write, given the exact same search query to go after. This article took me almost exactly 3 hours to write and is 2,071 words long. The topic of the article is buying a Traeger grill. Actually, the search query I was given is, are Traeger grills worth the price? The headline I wrote is, buying a Traeger grill, is it worth paying for the name brand? You'll see that I have a little bit of rapport building. I mean, this follows really kind of that response post recipe. I've got an answer target here that clearly gives my answer. Traeger grills, when compared to others, are not worth it when compared on things like their features, their temperature control, and even the cooking area, how much space there is to cook on. And you see what I've done there is I've given myself a few subheadings. I've given myself comparison criteria, and that allows me to do like a whole study on this thing. And that's what I did. My first subheading here is on their size, just how much cooking area, not necessarily how big they are, but how much cooking area you get per dollar. I actually just went and gathered data from websites. So I went to Traeger and I found all of the different models that they sell. I went to some of the websites that actually sell these Traeger grills and saw how much they're charging for them. I put it all in a spreadsheet, and then I went to Traeger and I found the dimensions of the cooking areas. And I just did a very, very simple calculation and found the average price per square inch of cooking area. I then went and did the same thing for the specific grills. You see, once I've gathered that data, I just have it. So putting it out in a table where I take averages versus a table where I give you the specifics of individual grills is very, very easy to do because I have all the data. But I did the same thing for various other brands. In fact, in another table down below, I show you a lot of the specific models that I looked at of these other brands. Some of the most popular so that you could get an idea here of sort of what the range in price per square inch looks like. And you can see again back up here that Traegers are the most expensive by far when it comes to how much cooking area you get per dollar. And then when you look at specific models, you can see what that range looks like. And then you can look at some of the other brands and see, where do I get the most size for my dollar? You'll see I went into detail in the next section as well. I focus on temperature control. You would think that because Traegers are so expensive, they'd have really, really good controls inside, right? No, that was not the experience that I had. Now for this one, it helped that I had actually had significant experience with grills from all of these different brands. And I have a video here that I was able to embed in the blog post. But get this, let's say you don't have those, the products right in front of you, or maybe it's not product focused at all, but it's putting together that sort of study is something that you don't have the means to do right now. Maybe look for somebody on YouTube that has, and you can embed their video right there in your article. In fact, Gutenberg has a cool little thing, it has a block where you can just take the link from the video and put it in, and then you don't even have to go grab the little iframe code snippet that you grab from the share section on the YouTube video. It's really, really easy to do, and it can just add that extra piece of value to your blog post. And embedding somebody else's YouTube video in your blog post is the right way to do it. They still get credit for the view. It's all good. In fact, YouTube has basically built itself to be able to do this thing, so it's pretty awesome. So I was able to share and show this study that I did and see just how much the temperature varied over the course of time as I set it to a specific temperature. But you may find other people that have kind of similar thoughts or similar experience in your industry, and you're able to just kind of borrow from the study that they did. Now, whenever you do your own study, it's going to be really, really, really valuable because you own that. But frankly, if you can't do that, embedding somebody's YouTube video into your article and then just kind of doing your own analysis of that and having that sort of feed into the main content of the article can still be extremely valuable. Next, I talk about convenience. Just if I stepped outside and had all 5 of these grills available for me, which one would I use? That's the kind of thing that you're only able to do, again, if you have experience with the topic that you're writing about. And then the last one, features. What are some of the features that these different grills have? And then I still show this price per square inch here on the side just so you can compare. Like, as you move up in the Traegers, these new features, your price per square inch goes up like this. So you can see essentially kind of what you're paying for those extra features. Another thing that you should notice is that each one of these subheadings, each one of these subsections, realistically could almost be an entire article. You really could write a whole article about, you know, which pellet grill gives you the most value for the size. And this article could rank for any queries that use sort of different versions of that terminology. One way to help be more successful with that is don't make the mistake I did in here of writing one word or very short subheadings. Write your subheadings as if they were a headline for their own article. This could be something like Traeger versus other brands, which is the best value for the size. Now, I would want to put that, I would want to look at the character count in there and keep that under 60 because Google is now taking subheadings and using them in the search results as the title of a subsection of an article. And so that's something that this article can now be improved upon as those developments have happened with Google. I would do the same thing for each one of these. My article can now rank for which pellet grills have the best temperature control. I could rank for which pellet grills are the most convenient to use, or which pellet grill is just most convenient. Is the Wi-Fi control on pellet grills worth paying for? That kind of information is all found in this meaty blog post that is really only focused on one search query, but it answers so many questions. Now, lastly, I do have a section at the bottom. This isn't necessarily part of the post recipe, but it made a lot of sense in this article, and it was to add some key takeaways. So, I mean, for each one of those subsections, I talked about whether or not Traeger was worth it. So here I just said, look, if what you're looking for is size or cooking area, go buy a Pit Boss. If what you're looking for is the best temperature control, go buy a Green Mountain Grills. I just gave the definitive answer once again, but not only the definitive answer about Traegers, But really, I gave a recommendation of what to buy depending on what matters most to the consumer. You can see how this type of blog post really does add a lot of value for the user. I could have written more of an opinion piece about, are Traegers worth it? I could have found a few pieces of evidence. I could have just said Traegers cost more than other comparably sized grills. And in fact, that's what the amateur writer in this sort of contest we did for a YouTube video, that's what he did. He looked at some other grills in the same size and just showed how much they cost. And that was about all he was able to cover in his article. So that's the problem with sticking with just the response post mentality, the 1,000 words to cover a single search query, is there are times where you could go into much more detail and add a lot more subsections, a lot more evidence that really backs up the conclusion you're giving in the answer target, but you choose to neglect it because you designated it as a response post. So now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go back to your response posts or the ideas you have for response posts in your search analysis. And I want you to identify some that probably deserve more depth, more research, maybe a little bit more breadth, maybe just covering a topic a little bit more broadly than just what you could do in a response post. I want you to change those and designate them to be staple posts so that when it's time to write them, you know that it's time to dive in and really give them just that extra bit of time, those 3 hours of time spent on them, and those 2,000 words or more.